operational risk management. Due to the increased sophistication of financial products and the increased leveraging of technology and its heightened sophistication, operational risks have assumed critical importance in recent times. The Basel Committee on Banking Supervision as well as the Reserve Bank of India have defined operational risk as the risk of loss resulting from inadequate or failed internal processes, people, and systems or from external events. This lesson discusses various aspects and issues related with management of operational risk. It follows from the previous slide that after studying this lesson, you should be able to define operational risks, describe the different types of operational risk, explain the operational risk management process, make risk assessment and risk identification. Various categories of operational risks have been found to be predominant in the banking sector. People risks include human resource risk, resource allocation risk, wrongful act risk, record keeping or reporting system related risk, employee error risk, and working environment and workplace safety risk. Process risk comprise of business process risk, new product risk, product quality risk, product development risk, business interruption risk, systems and control risk, compliance risk, and merger risk. Management risk include leadership risk, communication risk, disaster prevention and recovery risk, budget planning risk, and internal control risk. Business risk include customer satisfaction risk, customer relation risk, outsourcing risk, product obsolescence risk, marketing risk, competition risk, rigidity risk, business concentration risk, MIS risk, and relationship risk. Environment risk includes such regulatory risk, event risk, media risk, and economic risk. IT risk includes IT opportunity risk, access risk, data validity risk, data integrity risk, data availability and connectivity risk, data transmission risk, IT infrastructure risk, IT application risk, and building and equipment risk. Management of operational risk include risk identification, risk assessment, and monitoring and control or mitigation of this risk. The first step towards identifying risk events is to list out all the activities that are susceptible to operational risk. Risk control and self-assessment framework is designed to focus on the principal drivers and controls of operational risk and is measured through a series of organization-specific risk-based weighted questions. The responses are then calibrated by adopting structured approach to enable the operational risk experts to identify and assess risks in order to plan appropriate actions. Process map is representation of steps involved in any process from its start to its end. It is a technique which will enable the banks to identify, describe, understand, and ultimately improve the processes which take place within an organization or any of its division. Risk indicators are statistics and/or metrics which can provide insight into a bank's risk position. Monitoring of operational risk at the corporate level of banks by and large focuses on correctly interpreting and observing all the standards and guidelines set out in the operational risk policy and other related documents. Monitoring operational risks in a timely manner and in the framework of the defined methods, structure, and processes. Pursuing the measures initiated by the concerned corporate division for addressing the weakness in processes, structures, and control and for limiting the losses. Operational risk areas identified through self-assessment survey and historical loss data would be monitored by the risk management division of the banks and user divisions at the process level, activity level, and the bank level. The Basel Committee has put forward a framework consisting of three options for calculating operational risk capital charges in a continuum of increasing sophistication and risk sensitivity. These methodologies are basic indicator approach, the standardized approach, and the advanced measurement approach. In calculating operational risk capital charges, Basel II sets out three different methods which may be adopted. The basic indicator approach is the simplest of the three approaches and will be the default option for most firms. It applies a calculation based on the firm's income to determine its capital requirements. The standardized approach again relies on calculation based on income, but with different percentages applying across different business lines. To be able to take advantage of the standardized approach, firms will have to meet certain qualifying criteria. The advanced measurement approach is the most advanced of the three options. Under this approach, each firm calculates its own capital requirements by developing and applying its own internal risk measurement system. As with the standardized approach, the firm must meet certain qualifying criteria and the risk measurement system must be validated by the FSA before it will be allowed to take advantage of the AMA. Asset and liability management is a fundamental and critically important role within any financial institution. With the implementation of Basel II has come the need for financial institutions to benchmark their ALM practices and bring them up to speed with best practice. Considering the large network of branches and the lack of an adequate system to collect information required for ALM, which analyzes information on the basis of residual maturity and behavioral pattern, it will take time for the banks in the present state to get the requisite information. The problem of ALM needs to be addressed by following an ABC approach, that is, analyzing the behavior of asset and liability products in the top branches, accounting for significant business, and then making rational assumptions about the way in which assets and liabilities would behave in other branches. In respect of foreign exchange, investment portfolio, and money market operations, in view of the centralized nature of the functions, it would be much easier to collect reliable information. The data and assumptions can be refined over time as the bank management gain experience of conducting business within an ALM framework. The spread of computerization will also help banks in accessing data. We have already discussed ALM at large in Lesson 6. Now let us check if we have understood the various concepts discussed in this lesson clearly. Basic indicator approach applies a calculation based on the firm's income to determine its capital requirement. Right or wrong? Right. Interest rate risk can reduce the probability of an adverse situation developing. Right or wrong? Wrong. Management risk includes customer satisfaction risk. Right or wrong? Wrong. Before we end, let us briefly revise what we have studied till so far. Banks have to manage their liquidity, interest rate, and all other assets and liabilities. Measuring and managing liquidity needs are vital activities of commercial banks. By assuring a bank's ability to meet its liabilities as they become due, liquidity management can reduce the probability of an adverse situation developing. Floating exchange rate arrangement has brought in its wake pronounced volatility, adding a new dimension to the risk profile of banks' balance sheets. The phased deregulation of interest rates and operational flexibility given to banks in pricing most of the assets and liabilities have exposed the banking system to interest rate risk.